Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my final car review of Gran Turismo 7 update 1.49. For me, I saved one of the best till last, the BMW M3 E36 from 1997. When it comes to German tuning icons, I don't think anything can really beat this thing. However, today we're going to deep dive into everything about this car. We're going to review the standard version, fully upgraded, and talk about everything there is when it comes to this pretty iconic German tuner. So first of all, let's head over to the price point. Now of course, with the age of this car, it's a used car dealership vehicle, so it will rotate in and out. The price is 74,600 credits. It will have some mileage on it, PP rating of 494.72, FR drivetrain, 316 brake horsepower, 1460 kilograms, and of course naturally aspirated. So starting off fairly quite strong. Next up, let's look at one of the stronger points of this car. As you can see, it does have the wide body option. I honestly do think it looks pretty great, however it is a little bit impractical, does tend to catch the wheels on the arches. It also features a day one engine swap, which is of course the LS7 BRZ for 300,000 credits. Very much a drift build kind of engine swap, that one. Now in terms of the rest of it, it does feature your typical wheel customization as well as some pretty cool body options as well. So we do have the typical array of standard parts. We've got some aero parts at the front, sides and rear. However, where things start getting really interesting for me personally is actually at the wing and the grille. So when it comes to the wings, you've got plenty of options. You've got this pretty cool Type A option, the big Type B option, custom wing sets, wingless, and in terms of the grille, it's got some fairly fantastic options as well. In fact, a fair amount of them. So you do have the typical array of roll cages, and in terms of your lights and all that stuff, that is typically there with every car in game. But as mentioned, where it starts getting different is once you get to the front end of that grille. You can have your lights sort of covered over, you can have also some of the fog lights covered over. I just think it's a pretty fantastic array. Now in terms of the car itself, let's go ahead and review it. Let's first talk about the standard version. Now honestly, when this car first came to the game, I really wasn't expecting too much. Of course, it is a bit of an aged vehicle at this point, so it isn't going to be running the ridiculous performance it would have when it launched. However, that doesn't mean that this car's a slouch. One of the best things about this vehicle straight out of the gate is the fact that it's very slidey and loves to move around. I really like a car that bounces around in Gran Turismo, and I really feel like this is one of the better options, even with what is, I guess, today's standard, not the biggest output in the world, rather quite chunky and heavy. It really does feel great to start getting the rear end out on this thing and really pushing it to its limits. And honestly, it's actually made better by the fact it runs on comfort tyres, meaning there's just a sheer lack of grip overall. As I mentioned though, it's definitely not perfect. Of course, like I mentioned, it is an older car, so you are going to feel that bit of extra weight. It's definitely not the lightest car in the game by no means, and of course if you're not a fan of old school vehicles kind of moving about, getting the rear out and such, then honestly this one may not be for you. I also really need to mention the fact that under the new physics, this car can suffer from a few issues. I just don't know what it is about this car, but there's a few certain things that stand out as glaring issues. Number one, the wide body kit. Once installed, it seems almost impossible to actually get the height of the car set up correctly without it catching on those arches. You're either kind of too high and it's just running way too up in the air and just doesn't quite feel right, meaning it sort of moves around and feels like it's going to roll over all the time, or it's catching itself on the inner arches and unable to turn. That is a big thing when it comes to the wide body option. The other key issues is of course the physics engine. For me, it's one of the cars that doesn't necessarily agree with the way that the new physics work. You'll find that the car just constantly feels like it's bumping around and almost always suffers from that whole bouncing thing that we have typically seen obviously from the glitch and such. This was one of the key cars that could start bouncing around like there's no tomorrow, and it really does feel the same even after that whole glitch has been patched. So just be aware of that it isn't necessarily the best car to represent the new physics. However, once you start getting used to it, there's a ton of fun to be had even in this stock version. So as you can see, the car's about to finish up its lap time, which means it's time to see where it ranks on our lap time leaderboard. Now just note there is a couple of cars on there that I'm yet to talk about, but you will see in the near future, and the M397 goes slap bang in the middle of both of them, that being the Lancer Evo 5 and of course the Impreza Coupe WRX, 98 and 99 respectively. So in terms of the time, it's an 8-minute 4.867, so not the slowest car so far, but certainly not the best, to be expected. However, where things start getting different is when you start building up this car. So the build I'm running here is the non-engine swap fully upgraded version, and it sits perfectly at 700 pp, and you can massively build this up to be a full-blown super touring car, which is definitely the way I'd recommend. Again, as mentioned, just don't touch the wide body kit. It makes it far too awkward to set up. It just runs a little bit janky and can cause some pretty poor results. Now in terms of the suspension, you may notice that the car constantly looks like it's rocking about, and again, this is one of the issues that I mentioned when it came to it. However, once you start getting the sweet spot with this car, there's plenty of fun to be had. As mentioned, it's a very versatile vehicle. If you want to go for the engine swap drift build, you can pretty much do that. If you want to kind of just throw it around as a track day car, you can do that. Of course, if you want to go down the touring car route, you can pretty much do that as well. Really, there's no limits to this car. It's just an incredibly awkward car to get set up correctly. And like a lot of people mentioned, on the new physics, it is probably one of the more difficult vehicles to get that sweet spot with, really, no matter how you build it. Does that make it a bad car though? Absolutely not. I've had a ton of fun with this car. I've got many different versions set up, and I'm absolutely loving it so far. Probably one of the most iconic cars in tuner history is finally here in GT7, and honestly, it just doesn't disappoint. So let's head over and have a look at its fully upgraded lap time. As to be expected, of course, it does come in last place. However, it's not that far off the pace at all, only a couple of seconds behind the F430, which of course we reviewed alongside the Scuderia. So a time of 2:03.943 puts it currently in 7th place overall. So there we go, that is all of the update 1.49 cars now reviewed. In terms of our lap time so far, of course the Genesis X Grand Racer, which is a Group 1 race car, comes out on top. We then have the RGT, Gallardo, Scuderia, Impreza rally car, finally the BMW M3. So there we go, thank you so much for joining me. That is the last of my 1.49 car reviews. I'm going to go back to building some more of these things. I do have plans for a 600 and 700 build, so I'm sure you'll see them in the near future. Let me know what you think of the M3. Are you finding it just too awkward to get right, or have you managed to find that sweet spot? How much fun you're having with it? Let me know down below. Massive thank you for watching today. A big thank you to all of my channel members. Have a fantastic rest of your day, guys. Take care. Peace.